The first time I saw the cabin, it was half swallowed by June grass and the smell of salt. A splintered dock stretched into the gray water like a tired arm, and a rusted sign, "Private Property," hung crooked from a post. I stood there with the realtor, wind brushing scent against my boots, and knew right then, this was mine. "Doesn't look like much," she'd said, clutching a clipboard. "But the deed covers the whole shoreline. 8 acres of beachfront. The HOA border stops right at that fence." That fence was a silver line of rusting chain link at the far end of the beach. Beyond it, neat little pastel houses gleamed in rows, every mailbox identical, every lawn clipped to regulation height. The community was called Harbor Point Estates. Sounded peaceful, felt suffocating. I signed the papers that day without hesitation. 3 weeks later, I moved in with a rented trailer full of tools, a black Labrador named Scout, and a head full of quiet plans. After 22 years in the Navy and 5 in the sheriff's office, silence didn't scare me. Bureaucracy did. The first visit from the HOA came before I'd even unloaded the last box. A white SUV rolled up, the kind with the association's blue seal on the door. Out stepped a woman in press khakis, oversized sunglasses, and that kind of smile that hides a knife. "Good afternoon," she called, walking up the gravel path. "I'm Karen Whitfield, president of the Harbor Point Homeowners Association. We weren't informed of any new occupants." I wiped my hands on a rag. "That's because I'm not one of your occupants." She blinked. "You're within our community boundary, sir." "Actually," I said, pulling a copy of the property plat from my back pocket, "I'm right outside it. County land. This cabin predates your development by 50 years. Her smile tightened. "That can't be right. This entire beach is managed under our environmental upkeep policy." "Not the stretch." I handed her the paper. "You'll see the line runs here, just before the dunes. Everything on this side is mine." She didn't take the paper, just stared at the cabin like it offended her personally. "Well," she said, "we'll have to review this with our board." "Do that," I said. "Coffee's on me if you come back with an apology." She left without another word, tires spitting sand. For the next few days, things were quiet. I fixed the roof, repainted the shutters, replaced the warped deck boards. Scout patrolled the dunes like it was his new post. I thought that maybe, just maybe, the HOA had accepted the boundary. I was wrong. One Thursday morning, I woke to the sound of voices outside. Through the window, I saw 2 men in fluorescent vests hammering a sign into sand. "No trespassing. HOA property." I walked out slowly, hands in my pockets. "Morning, fellas. You lost." One of them, young, nervous, glanced at the other before speaking. "We're under orders from Mrs. Whitfield." She said this section's being reclassified under HOA protection. "Reclassified," I repeated. Interesting word. I knelt, pulling up the stake with one tug. "You might want to tell Mrs. Whitfield she's about 30 yards over the line." They looked relieved when I didn't press further. The sign went into the back of my truck. I set it beside the others that had appeared over the week. Unauthorized construction prohibited. No parking. HOA maintenance access only. All of them placed on my property. That afternoon, Karen returned. This time, she brought back up a man in a crisp white shirt with a clipboard and another woman recording on her phone. "This is harassment," she declared, stepping out before her car even stopped. "You've been removing HOA signage because they were illegally placed." She crossed her arms. "Sir, this area is zoned as communal shoreline. It falls under environmental management. You're damaging protected dunes." "Really?" I said, "because the county zoning map says otherwise." I pulled out my tablet, opened the GIS app, and zoomed in. "Right here. Parcel 142B, private ownership since 1972. That's me now." Karen leaned close enough that I could smell her perfume. Sharp, expensive, and overdone. You can't just do whatever you want because you found some loophole. "It's called a deed," I said evenly. Her eyes narrowed. "If you continue to interfere with HOA property, we'll have no choice but to involve law enforcement." "Please do." She blinked, clearly not expecting that. "Make sure you bring the sheriff. I said, smiling slightly. Tell him Daniel Rourke said hi. Recognition flickered. She didn't know where she'd heard the name, but she knew it carried weight. Without another word, she turned back to her car. That evening, I sat on the porch with Scout and a mug of coffee, watching the sunset stain the waves orange. For a moment, it felt peaceful again, until I saw the patrol lights. 2 deputies rolled up, one I recognized from my time at the department. Dan! Deputy Flores stepped out, looking embarrassed. Got a call from the HOA. They are saying you're trespassing on association property. I handed him my deed. They're wrong. He scanned it, nodded, and handed it back. Yeah, that's what I figured. Karen's been a handful lately. She's filed 4 complaints this month, 3 of them bogus. She's testing me, I said quietly. Looks that way. He hesitated. Just keep your cool, all right? I know you. I'm cool, I said. Just curious how far she's willing to go. After they left, I stood at the edge of the dock, listening to the water slap against the posts. The moonlight caught on the distant row of pastel houses, Karen's kingdom, pristine and artificial. I wasn't looking for a fight. I just wanted peace. But when someone like Karen smelled control slipping away, peace was the first casualty. The next morning, I found a fence line cut. The HOA had brought a crew in at dawn, laying down concrete posts and stretching a new fence that ran straight across my sand. They worked fast, pretending not to see me watching. Karen was there too, in her sun hat, directing them like a general. I walked up, calm as ever. You're trespassing. This is community maintenance, she said. You're free to file a complaint with our board. Oh, I will, I said, snapping photos with my phone. And with the county recorder, the sheriff department, and the coastal zoning office. Her smirk faltered. You're making this very difficult. No, I said quietly. You are. By noon, I had an email drafted to every relevant office. Attached were timestamps, photographs, and property line documents. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just followed the process. By the book. That night, as the tide rolled in and the new fence post began to sink crooked into the wet sand, I decided something simple. If Karen wanted a war, she'd get one, a legal one, and when it was over, she'd wish she'd stayed on her side of the line. The following morning, a county inspector's truck pulled up before sunrise. I hadn't even finished my first cup of coffee when I heard the tires crunch on the gravel. The door opened, and out stepped a man in his 40s wearing a reflective vest and the weary expression of someone used to dealing with entitled people. Mr. Rourke, he asked, clipboard in hand. Travis Holloway, County Zoning Department. Got your report. Appreciate you coming out, I said, motioning toward the beach. They built a fence across my property line yesterday. He looked down the dunes, let out a low whistle, and started taking photos. Yeah, that's bad. This fence isn't just encroaching. It's a direct violation. HOA property ends right there. He pointed to a metal stake jutting out of the sand, the survey marker I'd found weeks earlier. As Travis recorded his notes, I spotted Karen standing across the line, arms folded, pretending to check her phone. She was wearing a pink sun visor and that same weaponized smile. Morning, Mr. Holloway, she called out sweetly. So glad you could join us. We were just ensuring the environmental boundaries are respected. He didn't even look up. This isn't environmental. It's private land. I've got the GIS coordinates right here. Her expression faltered, but she recovered quickly. Well, that's not what our legal counsel advised. Travis chuckled softly. Then your counsel needs to review the county registry. He turned to me. I'll be filing a cease and desist notice today. They'll have 72 hours to remove that fence, or the county will fine the HOA $500 per day. Karen's jaw tightened. That's outrageous. What's outrageous, Travis said evenly, is thinking you can redraw county lines with a cement post. She huffed and stormed up toward her SUV, kicking sand in the process. The sound of her tires spinning out was almost musical. Travis shook his head. Every month it's something with that association. They think they run the coastline. Don't worry, Mr. Rourke. You're on solid ground, literally. As he drove off, I felt the first real satisfaction since this whole mess started. But satisfaction doesn't last long when arrogance is still breathing on the other side of the fence. By that evening, my inbox pinged with an email from the Harbor Point HOA. Subject: Notice of violation, unauthorized structure. From board@harborpointhoa.org. To Daniel Rourke. Dear Mr. Rourke, it has come to our attention that your fishing cabin violates HOA sightline standards, obstructs communal beach views, and fails to comply with approved exterior design. You are hereby instructed to submit renovation plans or face legal enforcement under HOA Regulation 4.3.2. Respectfully, Karen Whitfield, President. I almost laughed. My cabin wasn't even under their jurisdiction. They were doubling down. That's when I realized Karen wasn't just stubborn, she was desperate. Losing control wasn't an option for her. I drafted a calm response. To board@harborpointhoa.org. Subject: unauthorized structure. Dear Mrs. Whitfield, thank you for your concern. As confirmed by the County Zoning Department this morning, my property lies outside HOA boundaries. Please refrain from further correspondence or attempts to enforce HOA policy on private land. Any future harassment or trespassing will be documented and forwarded to my attorney. Sincerely, Daniel Rourke. Then I hit send and shut my laptop. The legal side of me was awake now, the one that knew patience was a weapon sharper than any blade. Over the next few days, small acts of sabotage began. My mailbox went missing. Someone dumped lawn clippings across my driveway. HOA volunteers accidentally left orange traffic cones blocking the access road. It was petty, but deliberate. Scout barked one night, growling at shadows near the dunes. I stepped out with a flashlight, sweeping the beam across the sand until it landed on a figure scurrying back toward the HOA path. The glint of a phone camera caught my eye. They were gathering evidence. For what? I couldn't guess yet. The next morning, I made my move. If Karen wanted to play paper games, I'd play chess. I drove to the county recorder's office and requested the full parcel history of my property and the adjacent HOA lots. Took the clerk half an hour to print it all, pages of old deeds, maps, and legal descriptions. One item stood out, a 1972 covenant agreement signed by the original owner of my cabin and the Coastal Planning Board. It established a public access easement, a 10-foot path leading from the main road to the beach, intended for fishing access. That easement ran directly through Harbor Point Southern Gate. Karen didn't own the access road. The county did. I smiled. That was my leverage. By the time I got home, a letter was waiting on my porch, hand-delivered, HOA letterhead. It was a summons to attend a disciplinary hearing for repeated non-compliance and harassment of board officials. It was almost poetic. That night, I called an old friend, retired Judge Samuel Whitman, who owed me a favor from my days in the sheriff's office. I emailed him every document I had, photos, deeds, and the covenant agreement. He called back 5 minutes later, chuckling. Dan, you're sitting on a legal gold mine. That HOA has been operating under the assumption they control the beach. But with that covenant, the county, and technically you, can open that path to the public. You realize what that means. Oh, I do, I said. They've been fining residents for unauthorized beach access for years. Then they're about to have a very bad day, the judge said. Want me to make some calls? Not yet, I said. Let them dig deeper. The next morning, I attended their disciplinary hearing. It was held in a small meeting room at the Harbor Point Clubhouse, the kind of place that smelled of lemon cleaner and self-importance. Karen sat at the center of a long table, flanked by 3 board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. She gestured toward an empty chair across from her. Mr. Rourke, thank you for joining us. Didn't have much of a choice, did I? I sat, resting my file folder on the table. Karen folded her hands. We've received multiple reports of your aggressive behavior, removal of official HOA signage, and interference with property management operations. We intend to issue formal sanctions. Sanctions? I said, amused. On a property you don't control. She ignored the jab. Our community was established with strict guidelines. Non-compliance undermines harmony. Harmony, I repeated softly. That what you call trespassing and vandalism now. Her smile wavered. Mr. Rourke, if you can't abide by our rules, perhaps you should consider selling your... I dropped the covenant on the table, letting the papers fan out like a magician's reveal. Before you finish that sentence, you might want to read this. She frowned, scanning the top page. Her face drained of color as her eyes flicked over the county seal, and the words public access easement, driftwood shoreline. That can't be, she whispered. It can, I said, and it means every fisherman, kayaker, and tourist has a right to walk through that lovely gated path you've been locking for years. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, a gray-haired man named Doug, finally spoke. Karen, did you know about this? Of course not, she snapped. This must be outdated. It's been renewed every decade, I said, sliding the updated record across the table. You've been collecting fines on county land. That's fraud. Silence. Only the faint hum of the air conditioner filled the room. Karen's lips trembled. Then she forced a brittle smile. You wouldn't publicize this. I leaned back. I don't have to. The county's already reviewing it. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. Not of me, but of losing her power. As I stood to leave, she called after me. You think this is over? I looked back, calm and steady. No, Mrs. Whitfield. It's just beginning. Outside, I could already imagine a headline forming. The HOA queen about to lose her crown, one perfectly legal motion at a time. The story hit the local paper within 3 days. HOA under investigation for misuse of county property. Bold headline. Full-color photo of the Harbor Point Gate with sheriff's deputy unlocking it. By noon, the story had already spread across community Facebook groups. Residents were furious. For years, they'd been paying fines for using restricted beach access, unaware that the HOA had no authority over it. I didn't leak it directly. I just forwarded the covenant file to Travis at the county office, and somehow it made its way to a journalist. Small towns have quick gossip veins. When I stepped onto my porch that morning, a half-dozen people were gathered near the gate. A few waved as they saw me. Some nodded respectfully, others whispered. Karen's empire was cracking, and the sound was beautiful. Scout wagged his tail beside me, sensing the shift. The beach felt freer already. Kids running along the shore, a couple launching kayaks from sand. The place finally looked alive. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Mr. Rourke. The voice was smooth, female, professional. This is Marla Jensen from the Coastal Herald. I'm writing a follow-up about the HOA investigation. Would you be willing to comment? Off the record, I said, Of course. Then I'll tell you this much. The law's simple. You can't build fences on what isn't yours. She laughed softly. That's quite a quote. Make sure it's just a quote, not a headline. I'll keep it subtle, she said, then paused. Between you and me, people are calling you the cabin man, the guy who stood up to the HOA. I sighed. Didn't stand up to anyone. Just drew a line. Well, she said, seems the whole town noticed. After the call, I headed into town for supplies. The grocery clerk, a kid who couldn't have been more than 20, gave me a grin as he bagged my items. Hey, you're that guy from Driftwood Beach, right? My mom says you own the whole shoreline the HOA's been fighting over. Not the whole thing, I said, smiling faintly. Just my piece. Well, good for you. My aunt lives there. They've been ticketing her for parking wrong in her own driveway. Tell her to appeal it, I said. That board's about to lose their teeth. By the time I got back to the cabin, the HOA clubhouse parking lot was packed. I could see them from the beach road, residents flooding in for an emergency meeting. I almost felt sorry for Karen. Almost. At sunset, a knock came at my door. It was Doug, the gray-haired board member from the hearing, looking tired but less hostile. Evening, Dan, he said. Got a minute? Sure. I motioned for him to step onto the porch. He exhaled. I wanted to apologize. Most of us on the board didn't know about the easement. Karen runs things tight. Too tight. I figured as much. She's calling for a vote to dissolve the investigation, says the county's overstepping. But people are angry. Some want her removed as president. She won't go quietly, I said. Doug nodded grimly. No, she won't. And I think she's planning something. She called an emergency landscaping crew for tomorrow. Something about restoring shoreline order. That got my attention. Meaning, she's probably trying to tear down part of the dunes or put up new signage to reclaim the area. If she does that, it's going to be a violation of coastal law. Again. Thanks for the warning, I said. He gave a weak smile. For what it's worth, a lot of us respect what you did. She's been bullying this neighborhood for years. After he left, I sat on the porch in the dim light, listening to the surf and thinking. Karen had been embarrassed, but humiliation was dangerous for someone who fed on control. She wouldn't stop until she felt powerful again. That night, I set up my trail cameras, one at the dune line, another facing the access road. If she wanted to stage another maintenance project, I wanted evidence ready. Sure enough, just after dawn, the sound of diesel engines echoed across the sand. I stepped outside, coffee in hand, as 2 landscaping trucks rolled up. Workers started unloading posts, orange tape, and a portable fence segment. Karen stood beside them, phone in hand, directing like a foreman. I hit record on my phone as I approached. Morning, Mrs. Whitfield. She didn't look up. We're reclaiming this section for restoration. County order. Funny, I said. I spoke with the county last night. They didn't issue anything. She hesitated. Then consider this an HOA initiative. You're aware you're in direct violation of the cease and desist order. Mr. Rourke, she snapped, finally facing me, you've cost this community thousands in fines and embarrassment. If you think I'm letting you turn this place into a public circus, you're mistaken. Everything I've done is legal, I said calmly. Can you say the same? Her jaw clenched. You're trespassing on our managed zone. I stepped closer, holding my phone high so her workers could hear. No, you're trespassing, and you're being recorded on 2 separate cameras. Keep going, and you'll be explaining this to the same sheriff's department you called on me. She froze, eyes darting to the men with her. They were looking uncertain now, tools hanging mid-air. One of them muttered, Maybe we should double-check with the office before. Karen turned on him. Do your job. I smiled faintly. That's fine. I'll just call Travis. He's probably got his morning coffee. Before I could dial, her voice cracked like a whip. Stop. Just stop. The workers exchanged looks, then started packing their gear back into the truck. Karen stood alone on the sand, trembling with frustration. You think you won, she hissed. I don't win anything, I said. The law does. She glared at me, eyes blazing. This isn't over, Rourke. I have connections. You'll regret making me an enemy. Funny thing about enemies, I said quietly. You make fewer of them when you act like a neighbor. She left in silence, tires throwing sand as she sped off. By noon, the county inspector returned with 2 deputies. They took statements, reviewed the footage, and confirmed what we both knew. Karen had violated the order. A formal citation followed, along with a fine substantial enough to sting even her pocketbook. That afternoon, the HOA held another meeting, this time without Karen. By evening, an email went out to all property owners. Subject, HOA Leadership Update. Effective immediately, Karen Whitfield has resigned from her position as president of the Harbor Point Homeowners Association. An interim committee will oversee operations pending community elections. I read it twice, then a third time. Scout barked at a seagull overhead, tail wagging like he understood the victory. I poured a second cup of coffee and watched the tide roll in, calm and steady. The phone rang again. It was Doug. She's gone, he said simply. Packed up, moved out this afternoon. The new board wants to make peace. Maybe work with you on maintaining the shoreline properly. That's good to hear. And, Dan, he added awkwardly, if you ever want to join the HOA board, there's an open seat. I laughed. Thanks, but I think I'll stay independent. When the call ended, I walked down to the edge of the water. The sunset reflected in the waves, gold and amber, stretching all the way to the horizon. The beach was quiet again, except for the distant laughter of kids and the soft rhythm of the surf. For the first time since I bought the cabin, I felt exactly what I'd wanted from the start: peace. Still, I couldn't shake the sense that Karen's storm hadn't fully passed. People like it didn't fade away quietly. They regrouped, they schemed, and I was ready for whatever came next. Because the tide had turned, and it was finally on my side.